is a beast with many faces. A gob of spit cast down from heaven. Snarling chaos howling mad. Throat of thorns shrieking into the idiot wind. Come one, come all, something for everyone. 1,000,001 podcasts. Excruciating. Exquisite.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. Lovely reading there, George. That was wonderful.
Thank you. This is my normal voice. You guys don't know that I'm doing a radio voice every time I talk on this podcast. I hold back my southern accent.
As always, I'm Pierce Lydon, one of your hosts. Pronouns they, them, here with us as always.
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her?
When I realized that when I don't start with the normal spiel, then it just completely threw me off. And then I was like, what do I do now? I don't understand. Anyway, how are you, George? What are you up to?
Oh, I've just, I'm at the tail end of a week off work. I wound up being more busy and active in the week than I thought I would. I had a few appointments. I had some social engagements. I got my hair done. It's a good week, but a little more packed than I necessarily anticipated. How about you? How's it been?
Oh, I feel like the hits keep coming and they don't stop coming.
Yeah.
Call me Smash Mouth.
All right, Smash Mouth.
Because I'm walking on the sun.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Funny story. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I used to be married. A lot of people know that. Years ago, I married basically my high school sweetheart. On our first kind of date, I went to pick her up at her house and I met her parents. Her parents were doing karaoke in the living room. And her dad was like, "Do you like karaoke?" And I was like, I guess. I was so shy, especially around adults I didn't know. It's literally 18. And he goes, "Well, here." And he just hands us both microphones and puts on Walking on the Sun by Smash Mouth. And we were like, and then later he made me do another one, and it was Losing My Religion by REM. He chose.
I feel like if you're going to do karaoke in Athens, Georgia, at some point you do have to do a REM song. We've talked about this.
Oh, God. I think it's a faux pas. I think doing REM's music within earshot of REM is... Ugh. Okay, I used to live in the same neighborhood as Michael Stipe. And occasionally, not that uncommon, a lot of people do, occasionally...
There's actually only two houses in his neighborhood. It's his
crazy.
House and your house. It's really weird.
Crazy. We hate each other like cartoon neighbors.
Enemy of the pod, Michael Stipe.
That's right. No, God bless. I just want to say he's been so supportive of the podcast since day one.
Shout out to definite listener, Michael Stipe.
But he lived around the corner from me, and occasionally there'd be someone in the neighborhood just blasting REM on a Saturday. And I would just think to myself, I bet he loves that.
Okay, honest question for you. If you're, we're both musicians, if your band ever got big enough that would be a thing, but it became a thing where people knew you lived nearby, and maybe that was the only reason that they were
would I be haunted by constantly hearing my own music? Is that what you're asking me? I guess it depends if I've heard my own songs 5 million times over 30 years and it's ubiquitous. REM's one of the biggest bands of the 90s. It's not like they never got to hear their music played. I don't have anything against REM. It's fine. I love to encountered basically all of them at one time or another.
It's so funny.
It's just how Athens is. Occasionally, one time at karaoke, actually Fred Schneider from the B-52 showed up.
Yeah, we've told this story on the pod.
Yeah, and the guy sang Rock Lobster, and it was really embarrassing.
Yeah, see, I do think, I don't know. Listeners, let us know what you think are faux pas about doing karaoke songs of famous musicians while they're in the room. My favorite thing that you've ever done at karaoke is just sing All Star to other songs, which is the best thing that you can do.
Bring it back to Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
Bring it back to Smash Mouth.
Everybody thinks that Smash Mouth got big because of Shrek. And while that is true, that song was written for Mystery Men.
A great movie, a fantastic movie. Is one of the best pre-MCU superhero, one of the best 90s superhero movies, put it that way. I think it was 99, right? Maybe 2000.
I believe it is 98.
Okay, perfect. The 90s didn't end until the formation of
Oh no, not
My
this
Chemical
again.
Romance. We discussed this.
No, I thought you were going to do the...
Well, 2001 was 1997. Scientists have been recalculating the math.
Oh boy. Well, in the world of Spawn, it is the year 2002.
Wow.
And
hell of a year, America.
Yeah, America definitely did nothing wrong that year. And
it's another hell of a year. I'm going to say something real quick. I'm going to get on the soapbox for 30 seconds and just say, you said the hits keep coming, and it's true. This is a fucked up week to be a trans person, fucked up time in America to be a trans person. This is a podcast that's hosted by two people who are part of that spectrum. I want to say just be kind to trans people. Look out for your friends who are trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, all these things. Check in with them, speak up for them, and if you don't feel like you know anyone in your life who is part of that community, consider that they just haven't trusted you enough to tell you yet, and think about why. And just put some thought into the fact that there is no trans ideology movement. It's just people trying to live our lives, and that's it. And so just keep that in mind in America right now. The same thing for immigrants and for black people and just women. It's a fucked up time to be not a cishet white Christian conservative male. So just look out for your people.
Yeah, and it's even a dangerous time for them, George.
Yeah, it is. Maybe the most dangerous of all. And we don't need to get into that too much, but
Well, the good thing is we can't get demonetized because we don't make any money.
We don't make any money. Yeah.
So that's fine.
And listeners, you have our guarantee that we never will.
I mean, at this point, we've been doing the show for almost 2 years, and
hell yeah, we have,
which is cool. But we've not seen a dime. So
it's gonna take off.
Yeah, no, any day.
It's gonna take off
any day.
No, but I mean, sincerely, we don't do this for money.
No,
and I don't care
if we
ever
game.
make a dime off. That's exactly right, brother, sister, sibling, everyone.
What was I gonna say? Oh man, now I totally lost it. Yeah, it's fine.
Probably something really profound, but we'll all just have to...
well, no, the thing I was going to say, just sort of to piggyback on what you were saying, about making sure to look out for the people who are just the most vulnerable in your life. Again, whether that be whether that be because of how they identify, or facts about their life. I think that this is a really easy time for us all to sort of, and I'm definitely guilty of this, to wallow in like pits of despair and just be like, well, everything's bad and nothing's getting better. And, the problem with doing that, with getting too caught up in that, I'm not saying that you can't lament the reality that you live in. However, that's not an excuse to do nothing. Things don't get better if you do nothing. And so this is a time to find small amounts of solace in, you know, I don't know, throw $50 at somebody on GoFundMe that needs it. You know, like, you can help. There's little things that you can do. And if you need help finding something that you can do in your area, reach out to us.
Yeah, we'll help.
I don't
I'm
mean
not
to make the Spawn podcast about, you know, mutual aid necessarily, but if it becomes one, I love that for us. So that's more important to me than anything else.
It's just a time in our country where it's more important than ever to just even speak up and say something that you believe is true and right, and to use whatever small platform you might have, be it your friends and family, be it your neighbors, whatever, to make sure people know that they're safe in your community and that you got their backs.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's how Spawn has been.
Wow, what a segue.
For the people of New York City.
I mean, really just an incredible segue. Well,
speaking of segues,
just got one.
Wow. When they still make them, huh? Or
speaking of segues, I just watched Paul Blart Mall Cop again.
Wow, incredible.
So,
you know, I've never seen it. Maybe I will someday. I don't know. What I was going to say is, when my ex-wife graduated from college, the keynote speaker was the inventor of the Segway.
Wow.
How about that?
Wow. Well, we've got 2 issues of Spawn today.
Sure do.
And we're finishing up a season in hell, parts 3 and 4. And, you know, Spawn 119 and 120, which is, again, pretty cool. We're getting to I love when we get to big round numbers. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it always feels like at least a little bit of a milestone.
Yeah. I don't love these issues. I mean, we'll get into it as we kind of get into the episode, but like, these were 2 issues that I found not confusing to understand, but not
some of the art is so kinetic that it's a little bit like muddled. I have a few thoughts on that as well, but I think going in at first blush, I like these issues quite a bit for a couple of reasons. The art, when it works, really works to me, and I kind of really enjoy the story developments we get into. It feels like finally paying off something that's been building for basically 112 issues now.
Yeah.
So it's always also fun when Spawn finally goes, okay, now we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We finally figured it out.
For sure. So before we get too far.
Yeah, Pierce, hit me with those credits.
Cool. So, Spawn number 119, A Season in Hell Part 3, dedicated to the memory of Jennifer Benton. Couldn't find out who that was.
Hey, R.I.P. Jennifer.
Plot by Todd McFarlane. Plot by Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin. Story by Brian Holguin. Pencils by Angel Medina. Inks by Danny Miki. Victor Olazaba, Alan Martinez, and Crime Lab Studios. Lettering by Tom Warzikowski. Colors by Dan Kemp and Brian Haberlin. Cover by Greg Capullo. And we're going to open with that narration that you had said at the top of the episode. This is it's cool. It's cool. It's a lot of flesh and hell and stuff.
I think right off the bat, I'll just make a point about the art, which is a lot of this feels very like there are places where the colors really enhance it.
Mm-hmm.
And places where if they were a little more understated or conceptual, then or I guess they are very conceptual, a little more understated or more
just a little more straightforward in some places. It would be a lot. Here we have these writhing pillars of men and
screaming human faces all melting together.
Yeah.
People all chained to stone pillars. You see, I guess that's Cog wandering through the icy plains.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Here's what I don't like. We've seen Hell a few times now. And the further that we get from Alan Moore sort of art directing, which I understand has been 112 issues, right? At this point. There's like an amorphous quality to this hell that is not satisfying. Hell is kind of nothing. It is a bunch of figures against a gradient background. And that kind of bums me out.
I was going to say, we turn the page here, and this is a 2 double page spread. And it is basically a rundown of the events that have unfolded in hell since Spawn killed Malbolgia. Get into the narrative in a second. While we're on the topic of the art, I want to say here, this double page spread is also a serious double-edged sword to me. And here's why. The panel borders of the demon being ripped in half and pulled apart by all the hands.
So cool.
Immaculate.
Yeah.
Love it. I love all the Fleabiac brothers kind of lining up. You see the Vacillator as Eye, Violator, and of course there's also Vindicator, Vaporizer, Vandalizer. How many was that?
I think
that's 5. Yeah.
Yeah, 5.
That's all of them.
Nice.
Yeah, I fleebed it. The thing that I think works slightly against it here is that if the inset panels were maybe a little bit more washed out, even similar palettes, but a little less warm and like to the forefront, if those flashback panels were just a little flatter to have a bigger contrast with the like incredibly detailed, like that looks like a Gwar album or something. The way that the demon in the center is being pulled apart. I love that. I love this double page spread, but I think to the point of how the colors interact with the art, there are places where it really works, and then there are places where it's kind of a little much. Here also, there's not much room for backgrounds on this double page spread in particular.
There aren't, but I think that it just comes down to like shot choices here. Like I get that we're just trying to show like a lot of these like denizens of hell or whatever.
Yeah, they're trying to show like the legions of hell.
I think that bright red is kind of the wrong choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, if that was more understated, that part,
there's something a little bit jarring.
A little better.
There's something a little bit jarring, but
there are times when I really like that bright red with the green against it. I think there are times when it looks fucking great and psychedelic. There are times when it looks a little muddy for the art.
I think it partly just feels like it feels unfinished, and we're gonna kind of, so we're getting this.
I agree with that.
We're getting this narrative. I'm gonna be able to point out exactly what I mean.
Okay,
shortly.
Well, in this case, I feel like what I'm feeling is that the background and foreground are fighting to kind of
that is part of it. That is part of it, but it also feels like the colors have to do a lot of heavy lifting about the setting, and so does the narration on some level about setting, because there's no setting.
There's also just supposed to be legions of demons on every page.
Right.
So
but like then you could have given us a bigger like a bird's eye view where we can like see more of the legions. I don't know. I think
you're a lot colder on this art than
I'm pretty cold on it, even though I like the panel framing and stuff. This is something that I forget who even said it, but it might have been in a conversation with enemy of the pod, David Pepos. But we were talking about J.H. Williams III and his Batwoman specifically. Very gorgeously rendered comic book, and like exciting panel and page layouts. However, David and I were both agreeing that like sometimes it's like a tough book to read, because if panels are in the shape of a bat symbol, what order do I read them in? Like that doesn't like lend itself to like narrative storytelling, right? This is
a little more impressionistic. Yeah.
Yeah. This is easy to follow. However, I do think that by having an exciting sort of, a really good idea for a double page spread. What if we did it in the insides of a demon getting ripped apart? Super cool. But you've limited the space that you have now to show the stuff that you need to show. and it just feels like I promise I'll almost stop with the background talk after this, but like it does feel like
I just don't agree. I just don't agree. I
I'm
think
not
that the
I'm just
background consists of the like waves of demons, and I think that honestly, we're getting way ahead of ourselves in this whole conversation. But I think the amorphous quality of hell here is kind of the point, given the story that's about to
Yeah.
unfold about how Spawn begins interacting with hell.
That's
It
fair.
almost feels like a Promethean flame in a way, in addition to an infernal one, where a lot of this is meant to just show that hell has devolved into just a morass of chaos. And to be fair, the first page of this was nothing but setting.
That's true, but it's like weird, even that's like pretty weirdly
I'm not saying it's perfect to
rendered.
read. I'm just saying it's,
I don't know.
I'm iffy on the rendering myself, but it is all
Yeah.
setting.
I think as it continues, and so like this page with the demon getting ripped apart, we're talking about it's a recap of Malbolgia's whole deal and what happened, and the king's throne has been abandoned, and there's a circle of chaos. The Fleabag brothers led an army to seize control, but they're not able to hold it, and so we're to understand that hell's kind of going through this, power struggle because of the vacuum that has been left by Spawn killing Malbolgia. We get the return of our friend Mad Mark, child beast of Saint Monica, which is really funny.
We're
instead of
flying
Santa
through
Monica.
this, and we're talking about the art, and there's stuff in here that relates to it that I'm going to pause you on real quick. There's going to be a 3-hour episode if we're going to do this. It says here, a circle of chaos, war between the demon breed, endless years of carnage, crimson pulp seas, rotting mothwing skies. And it kind of says it's just evolved into a roiling mass of chaos. Now, the phrase rotting mothwing skies, I could imagine that you could do more with it than like color gradients. But if you also look at the amount of just like legions of hell that are packed in here, I think the coloring is meant to be doing some of that heavy lifting, but I also think that it's not because of the choices in the pencils and the inks.
Yeah.
Personally, my opinion.
I also just kind of really hate this red with the like teal. It's
I don't mind it.
I don't like it. It hurts my eyes.
Fair. Like I said, I wish those panels were a little more toned down. Okay, so no more spending 10 minutes on a page. As Pierce said, we see Mark again, and yes, he's the child beast of Saint Monica, because of course Spawn sent him to hell from Santa Monica. From Hell to Santa Monica is my favorite Everclear album. But yeah, we also learned that in hell, years and years and years upon years have passed, so that like these armies have been clashing for untold numbers of years. Hell is eternal.
Yeah.
Eternity passes eternally, and it's different from on earth.
Yeah.
There's the metaphorical view of Genesis that God, when it says God created everything in a day, each day is like an epoch of time, like an epoch of time.
Yeah.
So there's more to that later too that I think is very interesting. There's one thing in particular that we'll get to that I was like, that's neat. But here, we see that Mark and the Freak are leading their own factions against Violator, and we catch up to Violator, who has Spawn in his clutches, chained up as his prisoner in the present day. This page of Violator, I think, looks sick.
Yeah,
fucking rules. Cool. Everything's working together well here. Those red hot colors are in the foreground. The cooler colors are in the background. And it really, though they're clashy, makes it a lot less difficult on the eye to look at than the way they're presented. I almost feel like if in the other pages, the hot colors were used for the demons and the cooler colors
for the backgrounds, it might have made it a little bit easier,
more legible.
Yeah. And Violator's got Cog strung upside down here too, and he calls him Kinslayer, first of killers.
We learned last issue that he is Kane.
Yeah.
We'll get more into that too.
You sad, quivering little lump of shit. We've been waiting a very, very, very long time for you. I never thought you'd have the balls to come down here. Love this Violator. Really, really fun. Holguin is clearly not interested in like Violator's speech pattern that we've like kind of that was previously established by McFarlane.
He's more demonic here. When he's in hell, to me, I like that he's a little more arch, but he's still calling him like a quivering little shit and stuff, you know. And he says, "Look upon your works, old man, in despair." Now, here's why I really like these issues. The art, we can debate the merits. Like I said, I'm warmer on it than you are, and that's fine. I think it's good to get into stuff like that because that's why we do criticism, to learn and talk about the art. But also, what I like about these issues is the story that is told and the background that is given and the way it brings the narrative basically of the last 100+ issues of Spawn finally into a clear focus. We've been like, you know, going in and out a little bit, focusing in a little more, dialing it in, and there's finally an answer to what has kind of been the biggest question of Spawn in a lot of ways. And we'll get into that in these 2 issues. That's something I have found satisfying. Every time they get closer and closer to this revelation about the real relationship that, you know, Spawn has been told all this time he has to all of this, the more I'm like, okay, good, let's find out more and finally pay it off. And that's why I think it's crazy that people skip these issues. You've said that like a broken record, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, and also too, we get more of an understanding of Cog and his role and what his role has been and why his role has been what it has to this point. It does feel a little bit like Holguin trying to be like, okay, what, it's almost like, when you have groceries that are going to go bad and you're just kind of like, what can I make with all this?
Right.
And
I guess I'll have eggs and carrots.
Yeah. Like this is Holguin, I think on some level being like, okay, what do I know about these characters? So what's the story that I can tell based on the facts that have been presented to this point?
I don't disagree with that.
And I think that that's pretty interesting. I think some people might not feel satisfied by the answers, and that's why this feels skippable. I also think that Holguin, you know, I mentioned a thing about Violator. We'll see it with Sam and Twitch as well. Holguin is not as concerned with dialing into sort of like speech patterns of characters and things.
Right. The things we've heard them say.
Which part of that is like character growth and like characters change over time. But it does sometimes just feel like the character dynamics have even changed to a point where they're so different that you're like, okay, I guess. I mean, that's superhero comics in general, right? Everybody's got their favorite run of a character or version of a character by a certain writer because they really understood that character. And then you get a new writer and you're like, oh, it seems off. So
right.
If you're kind of like looking at Spawn from that, like through that lens, like when Holguin first joined the book, you could kind of tell that there was a stronger guiding hand from Todd. And now that we are 50 issues into Holguin working on the book, the reins have been loosened a little bit. And like, I think he's allowed to sort of stretch his legs a little bit. Maybe he just doesn't get as much oversight. Maybe Todd's like, yeah, seems pretty good, pal. You know, like
we've seen him kind of take the lead on a lot of these little, let's call them myth arc kind of concepts of like this overarching story of what Spawn is, who Spawn is, and what his actual place is. And I think Todd, in a way, is often more interested in like the monster of the week, the gangsters, the espionage, as we discussed.
And we saw that
is trying to finally pay off all that other stuff too. Oh yeah, he's worked up to this. There's been, you know, plenty of that core Todd philosophy Spawn, and I think it's been great.
Yeah.
This double page spread to me, another very mixed bag. Because on one hand, we get Redeemer coming in to try and get Violator to drop Cog. And Violator says, this doesn't concern you, little thing. This is a game for the big boys. Heaven's had its use of you and has discarded you. So sit down and shut up. And The art here is simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, the storytelling is a little more legible. We get Violator's massive hand swatting Redeemer out of the
Redeemer
sky. We
double
get
cheeked up.
Redeemer's. I was about to say Redeemer fucking Dumpty thick over here. Fucking, he fell off that wall and had a great fall, daddy. But we see Violator drop Cog and snag out of his pocket the cask, the box that he's been carrying around since Menon seized it in Japan.
Yeah, we've been doing like a very like Pulp Fiction-y,
yes,
70 type of like box thing, mystery box thing.
Yeah,
with this box, because we still don't totally understand what it is.
The mixed bag of these pages, though, is the coloring, where like some of it is too clashy. This green on the left side shouldn't be green, especially because everything about Redeemer is like yellow and green. I see how they kind of want to have it look like it's his aura, but it's too saturated for that. And then on the other hand, to your point, I think the little panels where it shows the lava bubbling up in the background and like fountaining out, that's where the colors and the art come together to give more of a hellish, like a directly hellish mood.
Yeah, I don't know. This blue's really like getting me. I don't know. The colors the colors, you know, it might not actually even be the art so much as the colors. I think the colors are just really what I'm like allergic to this red.
See, I like this on some level because I don't know, it reminds me of a lot of like,
it looks like Superman
art. I don't think
in a weird
does.
way. Like the red, it's like this constant red and blue.
There's too much green in it for it to look like Superman.
I don't know.
I mean, I get that it's not your flavor, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that this page is one of the worst examples of it overall, especially because, as you pointed out, this blue-green gradient is kind of overpowering, and then the red, it feels like it's all in the wrong spots to me.
Yeah.
It feels like it's making it all muddy. I don't mind the color theory and the like saturated colors. I think the choices with it in some spots are like, okay, you could tone it back here again, a little less saturated, maybe even the same palette, and it would work a little better if like the colors in the foreground were very like bright and the colors in the background were less saturated.
You know, I think part of it is that it just looks computery.
And it does a little bit. I mean,
and, you know, and so I think that that's also kind of like, I don't know. That's a professional comic book critic. It looks computery.
It's all computer. Tesla. Okay. The next page, though, again, a Violator page. Here the color theory works a lot better for me because the reds and stuff are coming from Violator's nasty, bloody, gooey mouth, which is a red object. And then the backgrounds are generally that kind of blue-green gradient. There's a little red back there behind where Violator is more gray. And it is so much more legible. You get the intent of it so much better than on those pages where the gradient feels like they were just like, okay, just throw in the colors. Just throw them in there.
Yeah. And
you see my point?
Yeah, I hear you. I think where there's a simpler gradient, we'll see it on this page. We see it on the next page as well, where it goes from sort of like top to bottom, red, blue, green, back to red by the bottom. Like, I think when the gradient's just overall simpler, it's a lot clearer. Everything's a lot clearer.
100%.
And I think that it's fine to use, like, the other thing is that they're using the color gradient to reflect on Violator. Like, you can kind of see it on the underside of his horns that those are like green.
Well, that's coming out of the box that he's holding, theoretically, but it is a little muddier where they start mixing the background color with that underlighting, because then it starts to meld the background with the foreground in a way that doesn't quite feel right. Because also he's holding the light source, and you see the light source in that first panel.
Yeah.
but it's not coming out of the box necessarily there. So, but overall, it's way more legible because, and I mean, I'm sure a professional colorist or someone with better understanding of color theory could disagree with me, but to my eye, having that separation of the layers, foreground, background, midground, much more legible.
Yeah.
And this page with Spawn breaking out of his chains, I think that bottom panel, like you said, this whole thing is cool. That top panel is so simple. It's just got that like weird like speed line, like shunk.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And then you get Spawn kind of being lifted up by Violator. The storytelling on these 2 pages is very legible to me.
Yeah.
And that last panel of Spawn breaking out of the chains and like getting blasted with energy by Violator. Violator brings up Wanda. He's taunting Spawn. He's saying, "What do you say, Spawn? You want to spend an sorry." He's saying Wanda would be perfect for hell, writhing in agony for all eternity, and I'll make sure she knows every painful moment that it's all your fault. Spawn's like, "Shouldn't have mentioned Wanda." Violator says, "Ooh, little man, did I make you mad?" Now the colors here on this bottom panel look awesome to me.
Awesome.
Look so good. That is a much better use of that red. And again, that background and foreground are so much more legible the way they have that separation. It does feel like on some pages they were just like, I don't know, just do this gradient.
Yeah.
Just take the 2 colors.
We get some like kind of fun fighty stuff now. Violator makes his hand into a hammer, and I love this panel of Al catching it, of Spawn catching the hammer.
Yes, another great use of the gradient, where on top you got that cool foreground and red background. On the bottom, you got that red and Spawn's darker colors. Anyway, we're going deep on the colors here, but they are really kind of very different from what we usually see in Spawn. If you look at these issues,
I think that's the other thing too, is they're like distracting to me. That they're like they're so different that they distracted me, and that's why we're talking about them so much.
I mean, that's fair. I think they do take the lead in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Again, I think I made this comparison in the last episode, but like if you've ever seen the artist Skinner, I think we talked about this. He did that Mastodon cover. I don't think it's necessarily, I think if anything, he would be influenced by this maybe, but if you look at his art, he uses a lot of palettes like this, where it's those bright greens, crazy reds, you know, really hot and cool kind of mixed colors. And he does it great, and I like that. And this is kind of what it reminds me of, because I already like that style. It's just a psychedelic. That's the word, I guess, that best describes it. So my eye is a little trained already to like and accept that palette. What I think works less, as we've pointed out so far, is oftentimes how it's used. Because that bright red can be overpowering. Sometimes that's cool. If you have a drawing of Blade and it's like him in all black and like a more of a kind of a gradient face and like a really saturated red background or something, you can get a vibe going. But that's also because of the simple... Anyway, to talk about Spawn, I do like this kind of fight scene on these 2 pages. Colors working pretty well here. Some of it is like weirdly, like the anatomy is weird. This top angle,
there are a few panels where I had to stare at the panel to be like, what is this pose? Like, I don't understand the pose. Now, you know, part of the problem here is that this is supposed to be all in motion, and so it's Medina trying to calculate, like, okay, if he's in the middle of throwing Violator or whatever, what part of that am I snapshotting, you know?
And sometimes it comes off as just a jumble of limbs.
Yeah.
Not aided by the coloring in a lot of places. If that coloring was a little less saturated and a little more focused on delineating the shapes of Spawn and Violator, it'd be a little easier to read.
The other thing too is that I think that this gets to the kind of like, I'll say 90s art. I understand that this is the 2000s, but this gets to the kind of like 90s art that I think people sometimes bump up against. Joe Mad has a little bit of this too. There are so many lines on these pages. These
Oh
are
yeah.
extremely,
And
extremely busy
another reason
pages.
the color could be less
Can't.
saturated in those backgrounds.
Yeah.
Where the speed lines are and everything, it would work so much better to be more flatly rendered. I agree.
Yeah.
I do love this panel on the top of the right side page with Spawn getting hit by the eyeball.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then him getting sucked into this like kind of MC Escher-esque like checkerboard vortex. That panel looks great to me.
Kind of wish we got a little bit more of that. We sort of get some. See, the stuff that I was kind of complaining about does get better as this issue continues. The MC Escher thing is really cool. I like the idea that Violator's just really able to keep Spawn on his toes. And I love the idea that because they're in hell, their powers are sort of more expansive and do weirder things.
All right. So in this next, there's a lot of double page spreads here.
I know.
One thing I wish about the compendium is that it was you got a little more of the spread, because there's some spots in the middle where it's like, I'd love to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Now let's look at this page, because there are 2 points I want to make here. The spread. One, if you look around these pages, there's a lot more environment here, as you pointed out, was something that could have been missing before. We see these like tempests of like hellish just dust. There's this weird like sort of almost Steve Ditko-esque geometric like planetscape in these like almost puzzle pieces. You see like the universe quaking in Spawn's like energy blast. The second point I want to make is look at the colors on these pages compared to those previous pages. The background of these blues here, it's a lot of the same kind of gradient, but it is much flatter, a little less saturated, and they're letting all of those bright hot greens and bright hot reds, Violator, like that panel of Violator like opening his mouth super
So cool.
wide.
He's like a dragon.
Yeah, fucking rules.
Yeah.
Fucking
and that's the thing. I
rules.
think that allowing the characters to provide one of the colors that you want in your palette is
Same
just
thing
helping.
It's just helping separate them from the background
Yeah.
and make it more legible. There's still a lot of that like jumbled Spawn anatomy here, but it's so much easier to just be like, okay, that's Spawn. He's crumpled up in his cape.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And like the green of his like energy kind of being a little less saturated than the like lightning bolts that are over the page, letting it blend into that saturation across the page. Really nice. I also like the narration here, because this is the turning point.
Mhm.
This is what's important. It says something inside of Spawn shifts. A hidden eye awakens. A secret door opens. He is in hell. His hell. Bequeathed to him when he slew his master. The very fabric of this world exists only to serve him. It is more than a possession. It's an extension of him. And when it says that, that's where we see him like blasting Violator,
out, yeah.
and there's like, you can see his like the planets and like this cosmic scape. Anyway, it's an extension of him. It feeds him, comforts him, and gives him strength beyond his greatest imagining. And it goes on. There was one other thing I wanted to point out on this page, but it doesn't. Oh, Violator opening up like that really reminds me of the Ashley Wood Violator. And there's some stuff in these issues that I'm not positive where it lines up chronologically. We'd have to check, but like in terms of actual release. But there are some clues in here that I think can help us interpret where Hellspawn could fit into this, and I think it fits pretty seamlessly, and we'll talk about that. But as we go on, yeah, Spawn is basically pounding the shit out of Violator, tearing him apart. He's launching these like fountains of chains at him.
I like the idea that he makes like a big fist out of chains.
Yeah, it's almost very Green Lantern in a way.
It's pretty fun though.
And Spawn here kind of starts to fully encompass hell. I love this panel of the very top panel on the right side of Spawn's cape rising off the dark arch, and then like his eyes inset that almost show you like Spawn is
He's locking in.
hell. You remember how like there are those scenes in some of the older issues where Spawn would be confronting Malbolgia, and suddenly he'd be just like, he'd realize that he's not standing on the ground, he's standing on Malbolgia's hand, and Malbolgia's looming over.
Yeah.
Similar kind of effect. And again, just to point out, the colors on these pages a little more muted, and it works well. And
Works a
I
lot
think
better.
part of that is there's a little less chaos in the environment because Spawn is now seizing control. Spawn says, "Do your worst. Call all the hordes of hell to your side. It makes no difference. This realm is mine, and I have an army of my own." Meanwhile, the box that's been discarded is found by the Freak. And he is opening it and kind of very fearful. I love this little sluggy guy down here. I also love how we get that just little bit of background framing him.
Mhm.
Again,
Goes a
you're
long
right
way.
about those little touches. I think they could be too much on those pages where it's just hordes of demons.
Well,
but as we go into this and there's more of them,
ultimately those early pages that I was sort of complaining about, the problem is that if you go hard on like a cool framing device, man, you better make the shit inside those small panels that you made weird sizes now. Like, you better make them.
well, and again, the colors did no favor to make favors to make it legible. I like the palette, not so much the usage. I do like the palette here on Freak. This whole page looks great.
Yep.
The gray and red, that dark gray with the like kind of bright red and like pinky kind of crimson in the background.
Pretty
great
cool
stuff. Now, Spawn is called his army, and who is his army? But all the hell spawns. And I love this double page spread. This is, I think, now we haven't read every Spawn spinoff, but I think this is our first like group of spawns that isn't like just an army, a mass of faceless spawns in hell.
Yes.
Like of specific spawns.
And it is also notably the first appearance of Gunslinger Spawn,
who looks awesome.
Yeah, he won't be a real character for about 60 issues, but
he appears here. There's a lot of cool spawns here. Okay, there is a Spawn who looks like a Victorian like Dracula with like the cravat.
Yeah.
There is a Violator Spawn. There's Medieval Spawn. There's Dark Ages Spawn, kind of both up in the front.
There's this like ghosty Spawn at the top with all the
she Spawn down here.
Like
now that's the
spikes.
one that was really interesting because that guy is almost like a cyberpunk Spawn.
Yeah.
And I was like, so in hell you can be from the future and it's just always eternal or whatever. Kind of fits with like years and years passing. Hell is just hell. Hell is for children.
This is such a cool design that it bums me out that the Rat City like future Spawn that book is not that cool. Like not as cool as this.
Yeah. And his like bat-shaped cape. All these are awesome. This is just such a cool page. And again, that left side page with the guy up front with the glowing spikes looks fucking sick. The colors look amazing. And the inking on that page is so good. The way that like craggy chains are like forming the environment and like Dark Ages Spawn's face up front. Good.
Then we end with a real banger of a splash page, and it's Spawn in all of his, strength and glory, saying, "Traitors and rebels, demons and damned, choose your sides. The King of Hell has returned."
More sick inking on this.
Really incredible inking. We got some like Jeff Darrow
Adams almost quality too. Like if you look at his boot, that like hatching. But yeah, Jeff Darrow a little bit. This one looks great. This whole page looks great. This reminds me of some of those. Did you ever read the Mephisto versus limited series from the 80s? Like Mephisto versus Fantastic Four, Mephisto versus X-Men, Mephisto versus Thor, Mephisto versus Avengers. It's like a 4-part thing. So good. So cool. But one of the covers is Mephisto looming over like the X-Men like this, and it looks awesome. I think it's the X-Men. Could be the Fantastic.
That's cool.
Anyway, Pierce, it's Spawn number 120. And you know what we need? Those goddamn credits.
All right. Spawn number 120, Season in Hell Part 4, has all the same credits dedicated to Alex Cusack.
Hey, one of the greats.
Who is Alex Cusack?
One of the best.
A former Australian-born Irish cricketer.
Okay, maybe.
Probably isn't that. A product-minded engineer at Coinbase with
Wow.
experience leading senior teams. Probably
Okay,
not that either.
probably not.
Uh, yeah, so we open this and it's a flashback. And this is just, I'm not trying to breeze through this quickly necessarily, but everybody knows the story of Cain and Abel. Cain, and we're getting a flashback to Cain killing Abel. And because
Yeah,
it's gonna tie back to Cog, obviously.
because we see Cog in his young days as young Cain. He's blonde. Interestingly, almost looks a little bit like when Spawn tried to turn back into a human.
Kinda.
I guess not so much the face, it's more the hair. Anyway, yeah, he's kind of sobbing, and it says, "How could we have known what fragile beings our maker had fashioned, and how could we have guessed at the cruelty of his judgment?" Now we get another pretty kick-ass double-page spread. This is another place where the hot colors in the foreground and the slightly less saturated cool colors in the background work pretty good for me. The bright blasts of green around the page spawn like firing off energy, this huge mushroom cloud, this demon firing a fireball at him.
This works better for me than the last issue did.
Well, the red's all Spawn's cape, so it's a color we're already accustomed to.
That too, but even this panel with Mark of the Beast, this like smaller panel where we just get a little stuff in the background. I don't know. It's just so much more legible to me.
Absolutely. Well, there's not as much of an attempt there to render like as many figures in the background. It's more of a silhouette where like, some of the people fighting are kind of mixed in with like the background. It's a good shot. You're very right.
Yeah. And the narration is continuing in the same color word balloons that we got before. And it's saying, this place fills me with dread, a singular terror shared with no one else in creation. For I alone know the truth of this world, this place, which is more than a place, this seething crucible of pain and torment, the poisoned fruit of one mindless act of violence, was made for me. And then we get a close up of Cog's kind of terrified face as he rips the heart out of a demon or beats him with a rock or something.
I think he's beating him with a rock because that's
yeah.
his signature move. That's his Kamehameha. It says, "I made a vow since before there were words to count the slow march of centuries. I swore with all the hatred I held for my creator that I would never serve a day in this place. I've been true to my word." Now that's important. I really like this issue. First issue was fine. I liked it. It was cool. The fighting was cool. A lot of the stuff that happened was cool. I like Spawn being like, "Guess what? Actually, I think I do own hell." I liked that. This issue, though, where we get so much payoff with Cog, I love it. We understand.
Cog's been a pretty frustrating character over time, and also he just seems to disappear for a little while, and then pop back in. And so you're just kind of like, "What the hell's this guy's deal?"
Well, now we understand his terror at like Menon being like, they're coming for you. And also why everyone in hell wants him. It's not just because he escaped as a hellspawn, which isn't even the truth, I don't think. Maybe he was the first hellspawn or whatever, but I think there's more to it than that. Because
he's sort of the inventor of hell.
Well, sort of. Hell was invented to hold him, the first sinner. Now, what's interesting is he's never served a day in hell. So that means I think he lied to Spawn when he said, like, when he said, "I used to be a hellspawn and I managed to escape. You can't do what I did." I don't think he was actually saying he was really a hellspawn, because if he was, that's being retconned here to make that a lie. Because
I don't know.
He never served a day in hell.
I think he never served a day in. I think he believes that he never served a day in hell, that he was not tortured, that he made a deal immediately. Because that's how I kind of
we'll learn also that he's really been trying to gain Spawn's trust.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is a lie that could have gained that did gain Spawn's trust.
Well, and also having like the
it is a
tattoos
story
and
that
stuff.
gains Spawn's
Yeah.
trust. He did have the Malbolgia M, but that doesn't mean he wasn't. Doesn't mean he was a Hellspawn. Either way, maybe he was. It doesn't matter. That part is now murky. What
Yeah.
we know now is that he was the first sinner, and therefore hell is his prison. We cut to Redeemer, and it's saying, "I'm an angel, a creature of pure light and beauty. The fire of heaven flows through my sublime form. I'm a child lying coma still in a New York hospital room, a bullet lodged in my brain. How can both these things be true? Yet somehow I sense that they are." I love that he's flying through this MC Escher like world now, and
Yeah.
like these weird, like creepy goblins with like giant mouths instead of heads and like eyes all over their bodies are chasing him. Says, Redeemer continues, "I've come to hell to redeem myself, to correct a grievous error. The old man has sent me on a quest, a knight's errand. The fate of all creation lies in my unsure hands. I failed much in my life. I'll not fail now." Spawn and Violator are still going for it.
Medina draws some like A+ weird little guys.
These like evil cherubs
Yeah.
with the demon wings. So
Love 'em.
cool. I love this bottom panel of Violator like blasting all his energy at Spawn. And here's an interesting panel to me. It says, the demon kind fight with a mad desperation, some hoping against hope for a victory, others content to gorge themselves in the scraps. And it shows us this woman, the succubus apparently, who's like holding the decapitated heads of like Spawn and some other person, or a Spawn. First off, love her like weird Black Widow bikini.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and no prize this to myself.
Okay.
This looks quite a bit like Hell.
Oh, it does look
Like
similar.
if you think of this as, Medina's
if you
take on
described that character to two people and they just drew them in two slightly different ways, yeah, it does remind me of Hell. Man, it's confusing that her name is Hell with one L.
Yeah. Hell. There's Hell and there's Hell.
A little bit shorter.
Hell and Hell. Anyway, yeah. So this is another clue. We saw the almost Ashley Wood style Violator where like his whole mouth opens up into nothingness. We see this little figure that looks kind of like Hell. And the end of this issue in particular kind of seals for me, like, at the very least, this is how I can rationalize this.
Yeah, I think at least based on the time, I think at least like all of the primary architects of the Spawn universe are sort of talking to each other. So that would include, Bendis, Ashley Wood, and then eventually Steve Niles speaking with Holguin and Todd. So yeah, I think there are definitely kind of Easter eggs. I think the timing doesn't super work out, because there were so many delays to Hellspawn, and Hell shows up mostly in that shows up a little bit later. But
it's very possible though that's another reason that like maybe not the exact.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it could be intentional. I'll give that credit absolutely. That whether Hellspawn was delayed or not, they knew kind of, okay, we have these story elements.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, if nothing else, I'm going to no prize that that's what we're looking at here to myself. Spawn is blasting Violator with energy. He says, "Bow down before me and tremble." And Violator's like, "Never." All the souls of the damned are fighting the Hellspawn. The chains are like coming to life and turning into serpents. It's awesome.
Spawn's choking out Hitler.
Good for Spawn. It says it's a magnificent drama to behold, but in the end it's only a prologue, merely a dumb show. The denouement is clear. The victor was named long ago. And as it's saying that, we see Spawn basically gathering all his energy. There's this huge kind of vortex sweeping around him. And then we got back to the Redeemer. Now I'll say the gradients in the word balloons a little bit hard to kind of figure out.
They're kind of distracting, and they're not pointing out to me exactly who is supposed to be talking, which is, I think, a little bit of a light Tom Warzakowski-L.
I actually think that might be intentional, because I think we might not be supposed to know that it's Cog doing most of this narration yet.
That's fair.
It still looks too close. Anyway, yeah, we get Redeemer. He says, from a mile off, I can tell I found it. We get Freak staring into this box, just saying, so beautiful, so awful. And Redeemer lands and says, excuse me, you have something I need. And Freak closes it and says, take it. It's too painful to look at. Which is going to be such a cool moment later on, like in retrospect.
Yeah.
Once we know what the fuck is happening here, Freak being all like wistful about it is going to be so, and like, just like, not for me. That's like if someone asked me to run for mayor. I'd just be like, you don't want that. I'll fart too much.
We get this, I love this next page where we get back to Spawn. It says, a palace befitting a dark monarch is spat forth from the bowels of hell. And so Spawn is using his energy to make hell in his image, essentially. He says, let there be no mistake. The king of hell is returned. And he's got the slithery kind of dragon crown that he's kind of fashioned.
The crown of hell. It's awesome. And so Redeemer shows up with the box, and Spawn says, let those who stood behind me and those who stood against me come forward and face my judgment. Redeemer shows up with the box, gives it to Cog, and is like, Spawn, please. Cog is like, Spawn, please listen to me. And he says, is it too late? Is he too far gone? If so, we're all doomed. And then Cog says, remember why you did this. You wanted to make a better world. You're so close. Don't let it slip through your fingers. Here, take it. It's everything you wanted. He gives him the box. He says, you don't know who I had to bargain with to get it for you. Mammon. Mammon. I keep saying Mammon. That's a Street Fighter character. Mammon. Yeah. He gives it to Spawn. Spawn's like, what is this? Cog says, it's paradise. The last patch of Eden. Preserved by a rival god, hidden away all these eons. It's a seed. Use it to grow a new and better garden. Cool. Love that reveal, first off. Like, okay, great. You actually paid off something worth the like awe and mystery on some level.
We've seen multiple characters sort of see it. We've seen characters die because of it. We've seen Mammon and Cog have a conversation about it. Yeah. Now it's kind of like coming to a head, and it's really cool. And he opens up the box, and this green energy comes flying out, and it creates the Garden of Eden, essentially.
Rainbow spreads across hell, and it turns into the Garden of Eden. Cog is saying, Spawn, it's working. You did it. I'm so proud of you. And here's where the twist comes. Cog says, look, she's waiting for you, just as you knew she would. In the distance, with like frolicking deer, we see who but Wanda picking roses idyllically. She looks like a Disney princess. She turns around and says, Al? And he says, Wanda, is that you? And he runs over to her, leaving his Spawn form behind.
Yeah, separating Al from the K7 Letha parasite.
And it says, deep inside there was one shining mode of humanity that could not be darkened. A love that could bridge worlds. Love that could make a man return from the grave. Love that would let a king willingly renounce his throne. And we see the crown laying on the ground. The crown is lifted by who else but Cogliostro, as he says, I've been called many names in my time. Cain, Malchus, Merlin, Faustus, Cogliostro, all mythical wizards, diablerists. For century stacked upon century, lifetime after lifetime, I've sought someone to release me from the terrible curse that has hounded me. You were the one. I fucking love this. And here's why. So much of this is just concretely paying off everything Cog has ever said to Spawn.
Mhm.
Now, I think we're looking at the result of Brian Holguin doing a lot of storytelling, like threads and stitching to kind of get this all to come together to this moment. But Cog saying, you were the one that could help me seize power over hell myself.
Yeah, it's a fun little power play. It's interesting because I think like your brain kind of goes, that was his plan the whole time. Like he's just been doing this for like millions of years with different Hellspawn, trying to defeat Malbolgia and like take over Hell. All right, I guess so. That could be the case. I think that what works for Holguin in is that the earlier stories just like feel vague enough that kind of anything could have been the end game here.
Well, and he calls back so much to the things that Cog said, like, don't lose your humanity. Don't lose that one spark inside
Right.
you. Whatever it takes, hold on to that. And that winds up being the exact key to Spawn saying, I don't care about hell. Wanda's here.
Right. Yeah.
Which allows Cog to take that moment.
It's, it's the kind of thing we're sort of seeing this like era of Spawn. I'm thinking about it in terms of, we talk about X-Men a lot on this podcast, but I think about it in terms of like reading like Fabian Nicieza X-Men stories that are, for my money, I would consider them the closest to a continuation of Claremont as we get in the 90s. Like, I don't really think...
I mean, he was one of his direct follow-ups in a way.
And it does feel like because Claremont left so many things open that they're sort of like, well, I have all these threads here. What can I do with them? And
right.
I think
How
that
do I weave this
Holguin...
into a quilt?
and I think that Holguin similarly kind of satisfyingly pushes things together. I will say the one thing that I don't think works at all in this arc is Redeemer. Redeemer's just kind of been flying around doing nothing for 2.5 issues, you know?
Well, I think that he was there to get Spawn into hell because he's the one who stabbed Spawn and all that stuff and kind of how it happened. But he's really more of a plot device than a character throughout this. He's just a way for like things to happen to other characters.
Also, too, like I think that obviously stories need conflict, and conflict is often bred by coincidence. So I'm not trying to complain about that, but it is one thing with like kind of master plans from characters is that like put under the scrutiny of the story to this point, like some of it kind of falls apart. Like, did he know that Redeemer was going to show up? Did he have a different plan for Spawn going back to hell?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that he sees the moment, and that like Mimon showed up with the box. We learn that Cog was bargaining with him through the whole thing to get the box. So it's been seeded. The thing that I like is that Holguin is deft enough with the scripting to just cinch it up and say, everything Cog has ever said, it all ties into this. And it makes sense to you because it's happening now. We're seeing it unfold. Cog realized that Spawn was the person who he could trick into killing Malbolgia, taking the throne of hell, and then using that. He kind of seeded that idea to Spawn of like using the power of hell to recreate hell. It's just you see the scheming he's done.
Yeah.
And it kind of is like, oh, he's kind of been the Doctor Doom this whole time.
Yeah, I think it's
not necessarily intentionally from the start, but I think it's very Claremontian in the way that it's unfolded, in the sense that like I truly believe Todd was like, I want this character to be here, and I think I have a few ideas. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Neil Gaiman
that created Cog.
Spit on his name, who brought Cog in.
Yeah,
I want to say because Cog didn't get taken the way Angela did, I want to say that maybe Todd had the character in mind. He's also Cogliostro is a more of a mythological
it's pretty vague.
A folkloric character. Anyway, Cog here, we get this, speaking of Claremontian, this very like JR Junior era X-Men style panel of Cog lording over hell with this huge vortex as he's like sapping the power from Redeemer. He says, "It's a cruel joke, I suppose. Eden was always a lie, a thing to be dreamt of but never attained. How could you have known that? You weren't there in the beginning. But then this was never your story. It was mine." And we basically see this new serpent throne, and we see that Spawn, we see all the spawns and demons being sucked up into his vortex, and we get the impression that Spawn is being left to what he thinks is paradise, this idyllic place where he's with Wanda. We get this kick-ass like close up on evil Cog with the crown with his glowing eyes, and it says, "I swore I would never serve a day in this place. I've kept my word." And then in French it says, "Le roi est mort. Vive le roi." Which, le roi? I'm not sure. I'm not a French.
It says, Leroy est mort, vive le roi.
Well, yeah, Leroy means king. Leroy? Actually, I think that is where that name comes from, but I'm not sure.
Well, it means the king is dead, long live the king.
Yes.
And
yes, that is exactly where the name Leroy comes from. It is specifically from the French Leroy.
That's pretty funny, actually. And Cog has already said, "All I can do for you, my friend, is grant as best I can the one thing you always wanted." So kind of as payment, essentially, for helping Cog, Spawn does kind of get something out of it. And we cut to New York. Really love this page.
Yes.
And it is a man seemingly just standing in the middle of the road. And
it is the Al Simmons that we saw who was driving that cab in previous issues. And it's the Al Simmons we just saw with Wanda. This is the reward that Cog has supposedly granted him, is that Al Simmons is now apparently returned to Earth. At the bottom we get this little quote from Byron. "And after flattering dust with glimpses of Eden and immortality, resolves it back to dust again. For what?" Lord Byron, Kane, A Mystery, 1821. There has been a lot of just poetic reference and like direct quotes from these, like, the arc is named A Season in Hell. There's so much Dante. There's so much William Blake, these sort of poetic writers on what the afterlife is and what the biblical allegories mean to art. And it's interesting. And it makes me feel like so much of this is very specifically intentional.
It's really, what's interesting is that this definitely is the most moment where I just have no idea where the book's going to go. Like, obviously, Al's real now again, but that never doesn't come with a catch, right? And we'll find out more soon. But
this is where that other bit of Hellspawn comes in for me, because Hellspawn was him walking away, being redeemed as Al Simmons. So you can kind of, again, sort of vibe with how it could line up with that.
Yeah, there's for a book and a character who is obsessed with regaining his humanity, I do think that like you did have to give it to him at some point. And we've done that.
He's had it come back in flashes, yeah.
I was going to say, we've done it a couple of times in small ways. We've never really gotten an understanding for why he can't control the powers to make himself be more human for longer, but because especially since the power meter's gone out the window, it did feel like the power meter was meant to be like, you just can look human all the time, but power meter, so you can't really.
I was thinking about that as I was reading this, where it was like Spawn sapping the power from hell, and I was thinking, okay, well,
he could just be like so powered
all
up
the way
now.
Beyond it, so powered up now. Yeah. I wish fucking our listeners could see the like eye roll you did when you said that.
Listen, I think that we should bring back the power meter.
I think that power levels are the most important conversation around fiction.
And the second most important question around fiction is there a lore reason for this?
In this case, I think there is.
I mean, a lot of our show is asking, is there a lore reason for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then me complaining about power levels. So
We're true fans. Well, why don't we get into final thoughts? Because we're almost there. So
yeah, I mean, final thoughts on this arc as a whole. Kind of feels like it starts in one place and ends somewhere else entirely, but that's okay. I mean, that's, I think, sometimes the fun of this kind of storytelling is you can throw a few left turns in there. And I think there's some really exciting stuff. This is probably the most down I've been on Medina. Definitely the most down I've been on the coloring team. These two
yeah, I
issues
think there
specifically.
was a good chunk of that first issue where it wasn't quite blending well.
Yeah, there was it. I don't know if it was deadlines or what, or it just printed different than it looked on a computer screen or something. I have no idea. But
I kind of tend to think it was a swing.
Yeah, they're definitely going for some. It's definitely the palette of the issue. It's not like it was like
Right.
2 or 3 aberrant pages that were just like, oh, where did this come from? But I am very curious. Like, so setting Cog up as a new big bad, I'm just curious what that means for the world of Spawn. I'm curious as to, now that Holguin's gotten a lot of runway to do this, what is his plan moving forward? I think it is a satisfying plan because I think, again, like Cog kind of just like fell away for like 10 issues at one point, and then we did Hellspawn and he doesn't appear there. And so it did feel like we just didn't have him for a while. And it feels like, in the absence of characters like Angela, like I would love that if there were more Spawn and Angela stories, Cog was really the next closest character to him. And so we'll really get to see what Holguin's plan is as we move forward. And maybe there's not a satisfying plan, and that's part of the problem. And that's why people kind of fall off around this era. But I'm having a good time. Overall, I'm having a good time. Like I said, the art was a little rough for me this time around, and I can understand folks who are not in love with Medina's art. I don't. I'm excited for him to draw more fight scenes because I think as we continue, he'll keep getting better, because that's what he kind of keeps doing. Every time that I'm kind of like, I'm a little down on this, he comes back like 2 or 3 issues later and is like, oh, I figured out how to do that. And it's usually pretty good. But, overall, a couple more issues of Spawn and some big reveals. Not mad about it.
I think I'll agree with you that the art and colors didn't always work together in these issues. Like I said a couple times, I like the palette more than I like the uses of it in a lot of these cases. But I did really just love that twist with Cog. That just really worked for me. It kind of was like, oh man, okay, all of those boring ass conversations, Cog keep continually hammering this home. It was him fucking brainwashing Spawn.
Yeah.
Of course that's what happened. And again, I think it's Holguin doing what many comic writers often do and writing the history backwards.
Right. Where you just have to fill in the gaps and kind of make things retroactively work together, even if they weren't intended in the first place. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the beauty of especially storytelling on this scale, right? Where it's
we talk about Claremont all the time, and it's similar to that.
Yeah, it's definitely like making mountains out of molehills of continuity bits and pieces, which is really, really fun. The other thing that's fun is like with Cog in this new power position, like what does that mean for Mammon, and how does that play into it?
What's next for Hell? This is such a big payoff to so much of what the first 100 issues, especially, and even some after, of Spawn are. With Cog and Spawn just having these fucking tete-a-tetes and their relationship evolving. I can't believe that there are some people who say to skip this shit. Because it feels like it's so important to the story. And if you skip this, you'll never get that payoff.
It does feel like something that could have happened in a more importantly numbered issue, if that makes sense. Like if this was the big reveal at 150 or at 100, right? If you kill Malbolgia a little sooner at issue 75 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they were there yet.
No.
But I also think it's good not to hold back those big moments just for those anniversary issues,
True.
because there's so many issues of, again, if we want to talk about Claremont and X-Men, like Uncanny X-Men 127 or whatever it is, this or 176. There's so many just like random ass X-Men issues that are like the Dark Phoenix saga. You know what I mean?
176 is
176, thank you.
176 is a Madeline Pryor, Mariko Yoshida issue.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Dark Phoenix Saga was
Like
129 to 129 to 138. I was trying to remember the numbers in there, but as I've said before, I have dyscalculia. But yeah, I mean 129 to 138, there's barely a like quote unquote milestone issue in there. X-Men 130 is not like 150.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what a lot of times comics have to be. I think that's what's often lost in comics now is they tease the payoff more than they just tell the story.
Yeah, that's true. I think also too, when you don't have a really long runway, I think you are training readers for the wrong thing. And what I mean by that is, I think that Spawn benefits from like, here's a 7-issue arc, here's a 4-issue arc, here's just 2 random issues. Now it's like, oh, there's a new book. I guess it's either going to be a 4-issue arc or a 6-issue arc. And if it's miniseries and I already know it's going to be one of 4, I kind of know how the story is going to play out. You kind of can't really surprise me. The only thing that publishers, especially the big 2, surprise people with at any given time is just canceling ongoing series.
Yeah.
I think most recently, like NYX, like people thought that was going to last a lot longer. They were happy to live in that world a lot longer. And then they were like, issue 10, bye.
Well, I think a lot of the time readers now, especially from Marvel and DC, they want bang for their buck. And what that often means is, I want a story. I want to pick up a 20-page comic that cost me $5
Crazy.
And I want that $5 to buy me a story, not an episode of TV where like maybe there's not even a big moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like we talked about enemy of the pod, David Pepos. He and I have talked about this a little bit in our conversations about storytelling. He writes Space Ghost right now and Speed Racer, and both of those are titles where he has tried to take that approach of like, I'm going to tell a story in each issue. And I think it's paid off. That kind of value is what customers and readers want now. And I think it swung back to that from wanting those like deep in-depth, like evolving narratives, because those were new at the time. And now they're kind of just like, okay, well, I'm kind of sick of reading 6 issues that are never gonna I'm not gonna have any issue 7.
Yeah.
Like a quote unquote ongoing series that gets canceled in single digits.
Or even just stories truly written for a trade where you go, okay, I'm gonna spend $5 on the first issue of this, and then I'm gonna get nothing. I'm gonna get them restating the premise that I already read in the solicit text by the end of the issue, and you just kind of go like, the hell did I read?
And maybe there's some big out of left field thing at the end, like, oh, Thor's actually Venom or some shit or whatever the fuck. But like, it's just a hook to the next thing instead of just a chapter in the story. And people want that like a full.
Yeah.
Spawn, on the other hand, here is benefiting more from having those issues kind of build and pay off, which was really still the standard of storytelling at that time, that had evolved from those like single issue standalones. And, I think that it works here in particular. And I think that it's not something you can do as successfully in 2025 as you could in 2002.
Yeah. I think probably the only book that's really surprising people on like a month-to-month basis right now is Absolute Batman.
Sure, it's surprising people.
Just in terms that like Scott's been able to do seemingly whatever he wants. And so I think people are excited to see what the new take is on existing characters in a world where you don't have to worry about it being part of the company-wide crossover. you know.
Right, where anything is possible. It's kind of like the Ultimates at
Yeah.
Marvel. You know, those are the alt reality shit seems to be more popular right now because I think the main continuity stuff feels so high stakes that it's low stakes.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Absolute Batman, I haven't really read it. It's not my bag. Not my cup of tea. I'm not a huge fan of what I've seen of it. Yeah, just not for me. So I can't really comment on it other than to say, like, I think it's surprising people. For me, it's just underwhelming.
It's better than Absolute Superman.
I forgot that existed. Sorry. To be honest, I forgot those existed. I have never been a big fan of Scott Snyder's Batman. Just for me, it's very overwritten.
Mm.
And it is a lot like Grant Morrison. If Grant Morrison was just taking you by the hand.
I would say that his Justice League absolutely reads that way. And
like all the mythic Batman stuff with like the Batman cosmos and all the Batmans of realities starts to feel a little bit like the very kind of like weird abstraction of like Batman RIP.
Yes.
But just not for me. Just doesn't work for me. And I'm not going to say it's bad because obviously it is wildly popular and people really love it.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, which does not reflect those of my employer, if you can believe that.
Are you sure?
I double checked and it's correct that my opinions do not reflect those of my employer, Future US, and its subsidiary websites. Yeah, I triple stamped that. So, you know, your mileage may vary. Maybe you love those comics. I certainly appreciate the Greg Capullo of it all at this point. But, you know, this is Spawn
and Danny Mickey.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This is Spawnography, not Batmography.
Batmography. Anyway,
sounds like some fucking Grant Morrison shit.
Batmog.
He was hit by the Batmogrifier.
I think that about wraps up final thoughts. George, before we head out for the evening, do you have any recommendations for our listeners this week?
Oh boy, I did have one earlier. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was shoot. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
You go first this time.
Yeah, I just picked up a couple of trades of Immortal X-Men. Kieron Gillen, shit slams. Read Immortal X-Men. It's from the Krakoa era. If you're a big Sinister fan like I am, you'll be
Mr. Sinister action.
You'll be well fed. Are they doing all of the like Sins of? Because this is like the prelude to Sins of Sinister. Did you read any of that when it came out?
No.
The basic premise is that Sinister's been cloning Moira's so that he can use her power.
I know all that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm at the point where the idea of an alt reality X-Men story is like fucking poison to me. They're doing the Age of Revelation or whatever now, and it's like could not fucking pay me to read those, and they literally do.
Here's an anti recommendation. X-Men of Apocalypse Alpha was one of the worst comics I've ever read, and I think the art's bad.
Yeah,
I think Simone DeMeo. I don't get it. I'm sorry.
Works when it works. Doesn't work a lot. Yeah. Man, I have a book I'll recommend.
Sure.
It's a great book. I read mostly history, as many of you have probably known. I probably have mentioned it. I read fiction all day, deal with fiction all day, so my unwinding is like, oh, I'm going to dig into the histories of the world. Book my roommate recommended me that I've been really interested in lately is called Tutankhamun's Trumpet. And it is a book, I have to look up the author, but it is a book about the artifacts that were found in the tomb of King Tut, why they're important, and like what they tell us about the history of ancient Egypt. It's by Toby Wilkinson, who writes a lot of histories about ancient Egypt. One of the most interesting things about it to me that I'll go ahead and say now, just to get in my little special interest zone for 1 second, is the reason these artifacts are so important is because most pharaohs and like pharaonic nobility and stuff that have tombs that we've discovered were either heavily looted for like anything of value or interest, or weren't actually filled with goods. They were filled with artistic representations like paintings, drawings on the walls, that sort of thing. King Tut died so suddenly that they hadn't had time to do all the art for the tomb. So they put all those things in there with him so that he could have them in the afterlife. The idea being that, the paintings, when the pharaoh gets to the afterlife, they can use the magic words to bring the painted objects into reality for them so they can live on in the afterlife. Anyway, just very interesting, and that's why it's so important, and I love ancient history.
Why did he have it?
Women love bringing up old shit.
Why did he have a trumpet?
What's interesting about the trumpet is he had a trumpet because that's just, you had everything in there. He had musical instruments, he had tools for farming. But what's interesting about the trumpet is we have no idea what it sounded like when someone played it or what the music that it played was.
Probably ska.
It's just, we know it was ska. We know that. But we don't know which wave. We don't know if it was two-tone. That's what's such a mystery. But it is kind of fascinating that there are objects like that, musical instruments that we've never heard played. We don't know what they would have played.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been another episode of Spawnography. Dear listeners, thank you so much. Please rate, review, subscribe, where all the places that you do that. And, we don't have any ads, so tell a friend. You got a friend who likes Spawn or likes hearing two people talk about nonsense or argue about the Fantastic Four movie for 25 minutes on their comic book show.
If you just need to hear someone say, I love you today,
then you just got that. So, but yeah, George, for Tassel of the world,
he gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.